We're trying the same flash drive we had trouble with earlier, so keep your fingers crossed. But on this paper, the slides aren't as important as they were for the first paper.
Yep.
Okay, straight paper. It worked at home. By the way, Julio sent along this little mini mannequin that he did some research on. I'm going to stick it in the back where those displays are on the back table. You can take a look at it tomorrow or Sunday.
Where are you?
This is a paper titled "A Dozen Years of Shroud Science Group." That'll be abbreviated SSG. SSG's birth and developments. There are many hundreds of scholars in the world interested in scientific studies of the TS, the most important relic of Christianity, and many of them are interested in exchanging their points of view or in a verification of their result. But there is no official center able to coordinate these studies. On June 5th, 2014, 12 years after its foundation on December 4th, 2002, SSG is composed of 147 members, mostly Americans and Italians, but also coming from Europe, Lebanon, Philippines, Hong Kong, and Australia, and England. And they are academics, researchers, and scholars that exchanged 25,763 messages. At the beginning of 2000, with the coming of the social networks, some scholars tried to group each other with the aim to both discuss problems related to the TS and to keep informed on news relative to the study of the TS. The so-called 2002 restoration of the TS, made in June and July 2002, significantly increased the discussion among many scholars because many were not convinced of the necessity of the work done as recounted by Monsignor Ghiberti. A first mailing list for discussions about the TS can be found, for example, on October 25th, when Ray Rogers, answering the author, added Piero Savarino, Emanuele Marinelli, Frederick Zugaby, and Sam Palacore to his mailing list. On November 7th, 2002, induced by the author, Emanuele Marinelli proposed a mailing list named Shroud Debate Project that was addressed to scientific discussion on open issues related to the TS. She wrote, quote, "As general coordinator of the project, I appointed as scientific coordinator Professor Giulio Fanti, who will organize the debate that must remain only scientific without any polemic." She received 34 positive answers to be discussants, 19 positive answers to be readers, with the request of the possibility of becoming discussant in the future, and 5 negative answers. Among these scholars, there were names as Frederick Zugaby, Brian Walsh, Ramy Van Helst, Larry Schwabe, Ray Rogers, Sam Palacore, Bill Meacham, Mario Latenestrese, Marcel Alonso, and Dan Scavone. Among various proposals to the Shroud Debate Project, that's SDP. For example, Stephen Mattingly on October 31st suggested to widen the current discussion on the following topics: TS preservation, image formation, carbon dating, with the final goal to produce published scientific papers. Lotte Dresse, after the very positive results of SDP, founded a group on Yahoo named Shroud Discussion Group that was more organized than a simple mailing list, and tested it for a while, inviting Ray Rogers, Anna Arnaldi, Dan Scavone, Ramy Van Helst, and Robert Diniger on December 4th, 2002. After about 1 month of testing, Lotte Dresse proposed to all SDP members to participate in his new group on Yahoo, and all agreed. The author officially entered on January 15, 2003, while the leaders of SDP, Emanuela Marinelli, Ray Rogers, and the author, decided to disband SDP. By mutual agreement, this new group was called Shroud Science Group, SSG. At the beginning, Lotte Dresse formed 3 different groups named Shroud Science Group, Shroud History Group, and Shroud Religion Group, in order to categorize the treated arguments and to have a group, SSG, in which only strictly scientific arguments could be discussed. And the acronyms for Shroud History Group is SHG, and for Shroud Religion Group, SRG. While the SSG immediately flourished, unfortunately the SHG and SRG had so few messages that their members asked to be absorbed into the SSG, thus canceling the other 2 groups. There was a positive effect. There was now only one group discussing all the problems regarding the TS. On the other hand, there was a negative effect. The scientific discussions included many exchanges that consisted of chats. Lotte Dresse, the group owner, left SSG in 2005, switching the leadership to the author, who leads the group on Yahoo with the help of 3 moderators: Jose Botella from Germany, Marcel Alonso from France, Ray Schneider from USA. The group, which is private, is composed of various academics from around the world, researchers, scholars, and it has the advantage of presenting a remarkable multidisciplinary approach necessary for TS studies. The invitation of a new member requires the presentation of the new scholar and approval of SSG members within 3 days from the announcement. Very interesting scientific information on body image, radiocarbon dating, blood stains, pollen, coins, and many other topics still open, with reference to studies on the TS, have been developed also as a basis of various scientific papers published in scientific journals too. During these years, some famous members like Ray Rogers, Sue Benford, Novelli, Kim Dreisbach, Ben Weech, Fred Zugaby, and others passed away, and many new members joined, giving new points of view. Perhaps during the first years, a greater variety of scientific arguments have been touched with fruitful results, while more recently, there has been a reduction in the number of topics discussed, but perhaps with more details. It is worth mentioning the fact that while the presence of many famous members increased significantly the level of scientific discussion during the first years, more recently this level lowered when sometimes the journalistic interest prevailed the scientific discussion. The 12 years of discussion in the SSG has enabled members to analyze all the open questions regarding the TS, touching various religious and historical aspects, but mostly discussing scientific arguments. The most important ones are reported in the next section. The scientific studies regarding the most important relic of Christianity were stopped by the 1988 radiocarbon result. In 1995, Cardinal Saldarini, and in 2009, Cardinal Poletto, the Vatican, through pronouncements by cardinals of Turin, announced that no new samples after April 21st, 1988, for the carbon-14 dating, had been removed from the TS for the purposes of new research. The statement seemed to aim to discourage further research, even though interest in the TS remained high all over the world. In order to fulfill the desire of many that scientific studies on the TS continue, the SSG formed to enable the members to look at the current open questions, as well as to analyze TS samples in the hands of several researchers. It is difficult to enumerate all the interesting results produced by the more than 100 scholars in their discussions, which entail more than 20,000 messages as well as images and attachments. Even if the papers published by SSG members don't explicitly mention the group, it must not be forgotten that frequently the primordial ideas relative to many projects have been debated at the SSG level. Thanks to the reaction of some members to these ideas, the various authors of papers were helped in their findings just by the group's discussions. The author many times experienced this help and takes here the occasion to thank all the SSG members for their very useful contribution. A great number of published papers would not have seen the light without this help. Conferences. The 2008 Ohio Conference. Following many discussions of open topics by the group, the SSG group, with the special help of Joe Marino and Sue Benford, organized in 2008 the international conference, The Shroud of Turin, Perspectives on a Multifaceted Enigma, held from August 14th to 17th, 2008 at Ohio State University in the Blackwell Hotel in Columbus, Ohio. 36 papers were presented and widely discussed by the numerous experts and a number of students, predominantly from Italy, who had the occasion to present their works in the form of poster papers that were exhibited during the whole conference. The author's students won the top 3 cash prizes. First prize was a framed replica of the Shroud of Turin and $750. Second prize of $350 and a third prize of $150 were also awarded. The conference was such a success that the author was officially asked to organize another conference in Italy or in Europe 2 years later on occasion of the 2010 TS exhibition. Initial organization of IWSIA. After requests formulated in Ohio, the author made an effort to organize a conference in 2010 in Padua, Italy, in his university. But this idea soon was negated because someone in turn took action to prevent it. Alternatively, the author proposed to Paolo Di Lazzaro, a SSG member, to organize a gathering at Ania of Frascati. Di Lazzaro agreed to the proposal. While at the beginning the workshop was to have been organized by the SSG, additional events induced the organizers to cancel any reference to the group. In any case, the international workshop on the scientific approach to the, this is the word I have trouble pronouncing, archaeopoietis, with human hands, images, held at Ania Research Center Frascati from May 4th to 6th, 2010. Chairman Di Lazzaro, was a success with the presentation of 36 papers of authors coming from United States and Europe. Other conferences. In 2012, April 28th to 30th, the Centro Español de Sindonologia, organized with a SSG member, Cesar Barta, at Valencia, Spain, the first international Congress on the Holy Shroud in Spain, in which about 40 papers were presented or added to the proceedings. 2 years later, some SSG members decided to organize another conference in order to present additional research regarding the TS. In particular, Joe Marino and Mark Antonacci, among others, are organizing the international conference, this one, papers published by SSG. 2005 list of evidences. A great number of papers have been published by SSG members, but one of them has been officially published under the name of SSG because it was entirely derived from the many discussions of the group. Its title is Evidences for Testing Hypotheses About the Body Image Formation of the Turin Shroud, and it was signed by 24 authors. This is the result of the first goal posed by the researchers of SSG in order to better understand the TS, to compile a list of evidences of the TS upon which to base their further debate on the body image formation problem. It is composed of 87 type A facts that refer to unquestionable observations made on the TS about chemical physical characteristic of the linen yarns and fibers, optical characteristics of the cloth, body image, blood and body fluids, and other. 61 type B facts that refer to confirmed observations or conclusions based on a proof made in reference to the TS studies. 39 type C facts or observations that were evidenced by some researcher but that are not universally accepted. Following a proposal by Helmut Feltzman, the paper finally adds 21 analogies between the TS man and Jesus Christ from the Old and New Testament. Other revised versions of this list of evidences, as it was synthetically named at the SSG level, followed this paper, improving some sentences there contained that were widely discussed in SSG after its publication. Special issue on the TS. As the author was asked by Bentham Science Publishers in 2010 to work as guest editor for a special issue on the TS, he invited the SSG to submit papers on this argument. For an internal problem, Bentham canceled the project, but the author continued the editing procedure with Academic Journal's editor. In particular, the special issue was published in the Scientific Research and Essays Journal in 2012. Many SSG members sent their proposals, and the papers of Mark Antonacci, Cesar Barta, Thibaut Heimberger, F. Lautarulo, Rex Morgan, Neil Svensson, and the author were accepted by the referees of the scientific committee designed by the author. He also extended to all interested non-SSG researchers the invitation to publish, and therefore the special issue consisted of 12 papers signed by the following first authors: F. El Concho Pacino, that's a hyphenated name, G. Baldacchini, A. Carpenteri, G. Lucat, and J. Macedo. The special issue treats various analyses on the TS, including hypotheses on body image formation, forensic aspects, characteristics of mineral particles found in the dust vacuum from the TS, digital image processing techniques, and study of ancient copies of the TS. Section Publications in Journals of SSG Members. Chemical dating. One of the biggest open issues on the TS is certainly the dating. In fact, in 1988, the TS had been radiocarbon dated to a medieval age, despite a series of clues attesting a much older age. This result produced hundreds of messages on SSG that prompted various publications. In 2005, Ray Rogers published a paper in Thermochimica Acta in which the disputed 1988 radiocarbon dating of the Turin Shroud on the basis of his discovery regarding the lack of vanillin in lignin contained in the linen fibers. In fact, his preliminary estimates of the kinetic constants for the loss of vanillin from lignin indicate a much older age for the cloth than the medieval date assigned in 1988. In addition, he declared that pyrolysis mass spectrometry results from the sample area coupled with microscopic and microchemical observations prove that the radiocarbon sample was not part of the original cloth of the Shroud of Turin. Statistical analysis of the 1988 C14 dating. Pushed by the many discussions in SSG regarding the 88 radiocarbon dating of the TS, the author obtained a university research project financed by Padua Athenaeum for 54,000 euros, by which he developed a new dating studies on samples coming from the TS. With the help of Marco Riani of Parma University, Fabio Crasilla of Udine University, and A. Atkinson of the London School of Statistics, the author demonstrated from a statistical point of view that the 88 dating of the TS is not acceptable because of the presence of a systematic effect that highly biased the result. This systematic effect can be due to an environmental factor, perhaps also correlated to the body image formation process. Optochemical dating. Once demonstrated that the 88 C14 dating of the TS was not scientifically reliable, the author tried to determine the date of the TS using alternative methods. First of all, it was necessary to find a series of ancient flax textiles having known ages. About 24 samples have been found from 3500 BC to 2000 AD. Then it was necessary to find a property of the flax textile capable of establishing a direct correspondence between the sample's historical date and its property. Two properties related to the peak amplitude of both Raman and FTIR spectra have been found with the help of P. Beroldi of Modena University and A. Tinti of Bologna University. This procedure allowed to define a calibration curve with the corresponding uncertainty able to correlate the measured property to an historical date. After this, samples coming from the TS were subjected to the same analysis, and their results converted in corresponding historical age. The Raman analysis determined an age of the TS of 200 BC plus or minus 500 years at 95% confidence level, while the FTIR analysis furnished an age of 300 BC plus or minus 400 years at 95% confidence level, thus confirming the incompatibility with the C14 results. Mechanical dating. A procedure similar to that just described has been applied for a mechanical dating using a new cyclic loading machine able to test single flax fibers. By means of this machine, 5 different mechanical parameters, breaking strength, Young modulus relative to the last part of the increasing loading cycles, Young modulus relative to the first part of the decreasing loading cycles, loss factor relative to the last complete loading cycle, and loss factor relative to an inverse loading cycle, have been successfully correlated with the corresponding samples' ages. The 5 corresponding dates of the TS have been combined together to reach the most probable mechanical dating of the TS, 372 AD plus or minus 400 years at 95% confidence level. Having 3 new dates of the TS coming from the optochemical and mechanical methods, these results have been combined together, giving the most probable date of the TS as 33 BC plus or minus 250 years at 95% confidence level. A compatibility analysis additionally showed that only the 1st century AD is common to the 3 results and is in very good agreement with the date suggested by tradition in which Jesus Christ was enveloped in the TS. Image formation. hypotheses. Perhaps the most important challenge to science from the TS is the issue regarding the body image formation, which up to now has been unexplainable. Rivers of words have been written on this in SSG. The discussions have initiated various hypotheses that are only able to partially explain what everyone can see, touch, and measure on the TS. The discussions have produced a great number of papers, the most significant being the ones published in scientific journals. The author synthesized in a critical analysis all the most interesting hypotheses of body image formation, leading to the inference that a source of radiation is the best hypothesis, and that of the various hypotheses based on radiation, coronal discharge, CD, is the best, although no complete results can be obtained. The cited paper reports CD may be caused by various more or less scientifically identified sources such as ball lightning, earthquakes, and radioactive environments, radon, but perhaps the truth lies beyond science. Some consider that imaging of the TS by a CD may conceivably be a byproduct of the resurrection, and this may be why the image cannot be reproduced scientifically. Image formation, CD. Many researchers have studied in the details both the theoretical aspects and the experimental results derived from the application of particular hypotheses of body image formation on the basis of TS features. After some discussion in the SSG, the author published a paper about the CD hypothesis that prompted even additional SSG comments. This led the author publishing the results of this discussion at the 2008 TS Congress, and finally a scientific paper of the author summarizing all the interesting points previously evidenced. The paper concludes, experimental results with CD show similarities with the TS body image, and discussion is based on notes posted by SSG researchers. Image formation, excimer lasers. Another hypothesis of body image formation is based on the UV radiation emitted by excimer lasers. This hypothesis has been first formulated by G. Baldacchini and followed with great interest by Paolo Di Lazzaro, who published many scientific papers on this subject. Physiochemical interpretation of the TS imaging. F. Lautarulo published a paper discussing a hypothesis of TS body image formation based on electrostatic discharges produced by a natural event. A theoretical model of electrostatic fields based on the Lambert's cosine law supports the numerical results there obtained that shows the similarity between the ESD distribution along a rough numerical mannequin and the luminance distribution of the TS body image. A further development of this paper has been published with the collaboration of a student and thesis with the author who confirmed the previous results. Particle radiation from the body to explain the TS's image and its carbon dating. Mark Antonacci published a paper about the hypothesis of body image formation based on particle radiation coming out from the human body wrapped within it. According to his hypotheses, the radiation, quote, could account for or explain all of the primary and secondary body image features, the excellent condition of the cloth, its backside imaging, its possible coin and flower images, and the still red color of its centuries-old blood marks. Particle radiation could also explain the shroud's 1988 radiocarbon dating. Hypothetical role of calcium in the body image formation process. Sue Benford and Joe Marino proposed and preliminarily tested a hypothesis that tries to explain the image color with the presence of, quote, precipitated calcium carbonate crystal originating from a natural fabric washing process, end quote. According to the authors, evaluations using scanning electron microscope, micro-attenuated total internal reflectance Fourier transform infrared analysis, secondary ion mass spectrometry, chemical analyses, and microscopic comparative analyses all revealed nearly identical findings as those found on shroud image fibers. Nevertheless, they conclude that several other experiments need to be conducted to validate this hypothesis. Comments on Gorasheli's copy of the TS. Among the various hypotheses of body image formation, SSG also considered that presented by Luigi Gorasheli, who proposed that the TS body image was made in the Middle Ages by an artist who used chemicals. After a lively discussion in SSG, Thibaut Heimberger with the author presented a paper at IWSAI in 2010 and a comment in the same journal where they evidenced the disagreement of many TS features with the experimental result proposed. After the journal editor invited Gorasheli to reply, there was no answer, implicitly admitting the correctness of the published critics. Craig's hypothesis of artist. Another artist-based hypothesis on the TS image formation makes reference to modified carbon dust drawing technique brought to light by the SSG member Emily Craig. Nevertheless, the author demonstrated that this hypothesis is not acceptable. Superficiality of image on TS fibers. The formulation on new hypothesis about the TS body image and verification is based on a list of typical features. To better define some of these characteristics, a group of scientists of the SSG discussed the results of new investigations and experiments performed on fibers in order to deepen some aspects regarding the superficiality of the image. These results were summarized in a paper of the author that reports in its summary, "This concept of superficiality is here described at the fabric, thread, and fiber levels. At the fabric level, we show the importance of the geometry of the fabric. At the thread level, the very specific distribution of the color is emphasized. Finally, at the fiber level, we confirm that the color is a chemically altered layer about 200 nanometers thick found at the surface of the colored fibers. That is, the inner part remains uncolored. We suggest that the chemical alteration that produced the discoloration is related to the primary cell wall of the linen fiber." Double superficiality of the TS image. Subsequent to SSG discussions regarding the body image and based on the analysis of answers. The Shroud of Turin and its ancient copies. Cesar Barta published a paper describing the features of some TS copies. In agreement with the author of the present paper, it is there stated that the original Shroud of Turin cannot be the work of a painter because it would have been clear after a few minutes of direct inspection by the experts who have analyzed it with the specific instrumentation used on several occasions. Radiocarbon dating, sample area. A predominant argument debated on the SSG is the radiocarbon dating. Among the various discussions, one prominent hypothesis is that the 88 dating of the TS was impacted by a medieval reweaving. Sue Benford and Joe Marino published a paper in which this hypothesis is documented by many clues. They conclude, it is impossible to quantify the amount of surface carbon, other contaminants, and or intruded newer material in the radiocarbon sampling area to determine if either the surface carbon or the manipulation it represents had any impact on the 1988 radiocarbon dating. Further, characterization of the remaining C14 samples, Rhea samples, and the Holland cloth to ascertain the presence of cotton, surface dyes, and other restoration substances in accordance with these findings is warranted. Digital image processing and the radiocarbon dating sample area. To support the results of the previous paper, J. Morgan performed a digital image processing using an ultraviolet fluorescence photograph in which enhanced the contamination effects in the area of 1988 for radiocarbon dating. Forensic aspects and blood chemistry of the TS man. SSG members Neil Svensson and Thibault Heimberger published a paper regarding forensic aspects and blood chemistry from their studies performed on the TS. In particular, they considered the cheek and nose injuries, the dumbbell and streak-shaped wounds due to the scourging, the scalp wounds due to the crown of thorns, the swollen knee caused by a crossway fall, the wounds in hands and feet, the intact shins for non-broken legs, the chest wound, as well as rigor mortis. They finally concluded that the most likely causes of death are compromised circulation due to intense pain, compromised preload caused by the hanging position, hypovolemic shock due to dehydration and blood loss, accentuated by trauma-induced coagulopathy. The veiled sufferings of the TS man. The Passion of Jesus described in the Gospels and more general in the Bible very well agree with the sufferings of the TS man. However, many additional details can be unveiled that demonstrate how extremely severe were the tortures inflicted to that man. This is the subject of a recent paper published by M. Babalakwa and his colleagues, in which it is reported that the dislocation of the right shoulder shows a trauma suffered during the carrying of the cross to Calvary. A violent, blunt trauma involving the root of the neck and back caused an injury to the entire brachial plexus, which explains the lowering of the right shoulder and the right hand flat posture. The crossing hands on the pubis indicates that he has been subjected to excessive traction of the upper limbs up to the disarticulation during the nailing and the suspension on the cross. With these results obtained both from accurate measurements on the TS image and from experiments on parts of cadavers, the authors conclude that the fall and/or the flagellation have caused a pulmonary contusion with hemothorax and possibly a cardiac contusion, and then myocardial infarction and heart rupture. Just a couple more sections. About the so-called 2002 restoration. The so-called 2002 restoration of the TS set off many discussions about the way the cloth was handled for an apparently unjustified reason in reference to the hypothetical additional damage produced by the, quote, autocatalytic decomposition, unquote, of flax in correspondence of the burns caused by the 1532 Chambéry fire. Among the various researchers against this intervention, it must be mentioned Bill Meacham, who showed his disappointment, writing, quote, deep concerns over the restoration led a group of 52 shroud researchers to petition the Vatican in 2006. This aggressive operation was in stark contrast with modern precepts of conservation and resulted in important scientific data and heritage features being lost, along with great opportunities for sophisticated testing and sampling. The long-term negative impact of the intervention is feared to be substantial. The underlying premise that the image was threatened has been shown to be false, end quote. Other publications of SSG members. It is almost impossible to mention the huge number of publications by SSG members that appeared in books, journals, websites, and newspapers. For example, the website of Barry Schwartz contains Many hundreds of scientific papers and about 150 works have been discussed during the 4 conferences previously mentioned. Many have been written by SSG members. Concluding remarks. This paper describes the most important results published by SSG members since its inception in 2002. Founded in 2002 by Mario Latendresse and coordinated by the author from 2005, the SSG is currently a group of 147 scholars, mostly from the U.S., composed of academics, researchers, and scholars presenting a remarkable multidisciplinary approach necessary for shroud studies. From December 4th, 2002 to now, about 26,000 messages have been exchanged, commenting on all the news pertaining to the TS. Perhaps the most interesting arguments treated were about the hypothesis of the TS body image formation and the dating of the flax fabric, but also other still open arguments like blood stains, pollen, coins, and many other topics that have been discussed. Many of them brought to light many new interesting aspects. The SSG